Hey guys, what's up? It's Filter SC here, and I'm back for episode number 7 of the Bronze Masters Mentality series. In this particular episode, we're going to be talking about challenging yourself, and this is another one of the videos that I feel is super important for everybody out there that is still watching, and it is one of the best ways to get better at the game and continue to progress, continue to jump up leagues, and have a positive attitude when you're playing the game, because there's nothing worse than being like, well, this is too hard, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to take the easy way out. Can't do that, guys. You got to challenge yourself to get better. You got to make sure you're taking full advantage of the tools you have available to you. Now, I'm just going to quickly preface this where I say don't look for the easy way out. But what I want to really quickly say is it's okay to cheese, and it's okay to do like a 1-1 roach timing, or a Baneling bust, or a big speedling run by, or a blink stalker all in, or 2 barracks proxy when you're you've played the matchup like 10 times in a row. Maybe you don't want to play it for the 11th time in a row because you just keep getting one race on ladder. Maybe you haven't had really time to look at a matchup and you're not quite ready. Maybe you're working really hard on your ZVP, so you're not too worried about your ZVT right now, and you just want to get the games over with quickly without having to think about them too much. Then hey, there's nothing wrong with throwing up a cheese every now and then to just try to get through the game and move on to the next one where you can work on something else that you're really focused on improving. However, what you really don't want to do is look for the easy way to play a matchup when you're talking about it from a kind of a long-term perspective. If you really struggle against Terran as a Zerg, the last thing you want to start doing is just doing like 1-1 roaches all day, because like, where are you going to learn? How are you going to get better? How is your Ling Bane going to get better if you're just doing roach all ends? And the answer is it's not. So you really need to not look for the easy way out, and you need to try to challenge yourself and get better. And just a quick FYI on 1-1 roach all ends, all the early Hellbat pressures and stuff like that, like the one that comes with like 8 Marines and like 6 Hellbats and just rallies Hellbats in, those are designed specifically to kill the 1-1 roach all ends. If that timing hits you correctly, it's going to hit you right as you're kind of putting up your lair before you start a 1-1. When you don't have any gas, you don't have any money, you don't have a Baneling nest, and you don't have any Zerglings, you're not going to be able to hold the attack without taking either a tremendous amount of damage or just outright losing the game. There's a reason Hyun doesn't do that against top level players, and he started to play Ling Bane Muta because it just gets killed because these guys are doing these crazy early attacks, right? And the same thing applies on ladder. Get in there, scout, figure out what you're doing. But above all, don't take the easy way out. It's the easiest way to start getting really bad habits, and you don't want to do that, man. You can't take the easy way out. It's one thing to do a build every now and then. It's one thing to do a build to get past a map you don't like. It's one thing to do a build because you've hit like 8 Terrans in a row and you're sick and tired of the matchup. It's something else to do that every time you see a Terran on ladder as your go-to build, because you know what, you got to get better. And the same thing applies with Terrans facing Protoss. The same thing applies for Protoss players playing against Zerg. You really need to think about what you're doing and not necessarily just looking for the easy way out every single game. And the other thing about this is, quite often what you'll see when you look for the easy way out is you'll see a whole bunch, like I go on All Things Zerg, and whenever somebody's complaining about Terran, I see so many recommendations for like a 1-1 roach all in and stuff, and it's like, that's not the answer. 1-1 roach all in's great against like a Terran who goes for 3 command centers and sits on his ass and doesn't do anything. It's terrible if he's going to put pressure on you. You're going to die and lose so many games because of all the early pressures. It just doesn't work, right? So quite often, look at it like this. The percentage of players that are in Masters or even in Diamond is like 12% of the player base is in that GM, Pro, Diamond, Masters level of play. 88% of the player base is below that. And when you're talking about, places like Reddit, you're talking about subreddits, you're talking about, the Battle.net forums, you're talking about 88% of the player base that, I'm not going to say they don't know what they're talking about, because a lot of people in lower leagues do. But if you were to take that 88% and pull them out, there'd be a lot of very poor, very incorrect advice coming off those guys. Just as quite often I give incorrect advice, right? Because I'm not at the highest level. And you really have to be careful, because those are the guys that are upvoting, right? That really popular post that talks about, maybe doing a Roach Bane all in or playing Roach Hydra or something that's getting mass upvoted, that you're going to as your main core, key source of advice, that's not scrutinized that well, right? It's the wrong people upvoting it. So what you really have to do is you have to look to what the pro players are doing. You can't just be like, okay, well, this is what's popular on Reddit, this is what's popular on YouTube, this is what FilterSC says. That stuff doesn't really matter. What you want to do is look at what the pros are doing. You know, go find recent replays. Home Story Cup just put theirs out. WCS just put their replays out. Figure out how the pro Zergs are dealing with Terran, right? Go look at Life's games. Life has been destroying Terrans left, right, and center. Right? Now, he had trouble against 4GG's mech style, but overall Life has been absolutely destroying people. So go check him out. Right? You want to really look at what the pros are doing. How are the pros dealing with Protoss? Figure it out. Start to emulate their style. So once you've kind of figured out how you're going to do it, you need to start attacking your weaknesses, right? You can't sit there and be like, well, I'm bad against Widowmines, so I don't want to play against them, so I'm just going to go Roach Hydra. It doesn't work that way. You need to be like, okay, I'm bad against Widowmines, how do I deal with this? Call up a buddy, find out, you know, find a Terran practice partner. If some guy just smashes the hell out of you on that, or be like, hey man, like, do you want to practice? Because I'm not very good against Widowmines. You know, maybe he'll say yes, maybe he'll BM you, who knows, right? But you got to find some practice partners. Join a team. I got some of the best practice I've ever had when I was regularly talking to a team that I talk to and play on, right? That kind of stuff is really, really important if you want to start getting better. You find a practice partner and you play against what you're bad at from a macro perspective, right? And then if you really want to get into it, you can start, you know, doing a bunch of cheeses against each other and all that stuff. If you watch pros practice, they cheese the hell out of each other, right? And that's why they're so good at stopping it. So you really need to figure out what your weaknesses are and go find a practice partner and start attacking those weaknesses, right? And if it's something as simple as like you don't really know what you're doing in terms of a build order, well, you don't need a practice partner for that. You know, go play custom games if you need to. And then the last thing is if both of those things are, you know, you've done both of those stages, you feel like you're ready to go. When you go hit ladder, don't be afraid to lose, man. I play new styles, new builds, and new techniques all the time on ladder. And I'll get smashed into the ground. I've got a super embarrassing game where I went like, I was like, hey, I wonder if you can go 1 barracks FE in the mech. And the answer is pretty much no, it doesn't work very well. Because you don't get gas nearly fast enough based on the way I did it. I did like 3cc, 1 barracks. It was awful, and I got smashed by like a really terrible roach attack. Because I just didn't have any units. I had like 2 siege tanks and we're in a bad position in a Thor at like 9 minutes. So obviously I lost. But I'm not afraid to try new things on ladder. I'm not afraid to lose the games. I really don't care. The most important thing to me is like, how can I get better? How can I figure out if things work or not? And the simple answer is I'm not afraid to lose games. I really don't care when I lose a game on ladder. It doesn't bother me at all. The only time I get mad when I lose a game is when I make mistakes that I know better than. You know, if I attack up a ramp into 2 Colossus, lose my whole army, and then have a Colossus all in and kill me at the other end, I'm pissed. Because I know better than that, but I still make those mistakes. Right? So don't be afraid, man. Just attack your weaknesses. Don't be afraid to lose. Like we talked about in the last video, no fear. Just make sure you're challenging yourself. Make sure you're getting better. Don't sit back and go, oh, I don't like this, wah, wah, wah. No, man. Figure out a way. Get better. Improve. You know, there's very few people in the world that play StarCraft 2. You know, when you lose to something your opponent did, there are players that play your race that would have murdered that and you just snapped the neck on that push. So hard it wouldn't have even been funny. It would have been a joke, right? You see, there's a few times where I was watching Flash play and he was playing, I think it was at Home Story Cup, and the Protoss was trying to 2-base all-in him and he killed the Protoss' 2-base all-in at the Protoss base while taking a third. You know, there's always a bigger, badder, meaner bully out there, guys, so... You know, maybe that 2-base all-in and crushed a whole bunch of Terran hopes on ladder. The Flash just showed, hey, I can snap that. So just remember, guys, you can always get better. You can always improve. You can always perform better. Don't be afraid to attack your weaknesses, and don't be afraid to lose, man. And tying right into that, man, it's real simple. If you're complaining and bitching about something, like, I get BM'd all the time on ladder, usually by Zergs, but... The funny part is, when I play Zerg, the Terrans BM me, so it is what it is, right? Or ZBZ I get BM'd, I don't know why. It's a little strange, but when you're complaining about something, if you're BMing, if you're, you know, after the game you're like, oh, I hate Widowmines, they're so lame, you suck, Terran needs a race. You gotta get better, man. Like, you can't complain about something. If you're that vocal about your hatred for a unit, you need to get better. Right? And that can be Widowmines, that can be Storm, that can be Terran. And when I say Terran, I mean the Terran that just like It happened to me where I had Vikings in position, a Raven in position. He had no idea what was behind those units, and he just like boosts past them and drops my base about 5 seconds before one of my turrets would have finished. That would have just completely stopped his attack. It ended up doing a lot of damage, right? And that's a perfect example of Terran. But at the end of the day, I need to get better and just have that missile turret up just a fraction of a second earlier so I don't lose to that kind of garbage, right? And when I say Terran, I mean like the Terran that just YOLO drops you over and over, and it's like, dude, like you can't do that. You don't know what's there. That's not a healthy way to play. Well, at the end of the day, make him scared to do that. Figure out why you're getting, you know, just random ass Terran drops all over the place. Because you shouldn't be losing to that kind of garbage. At the end of the day, I was mad at the other guy for playing like that, and then the second part is I was even more mad at myself for losing to that kind of garbage, right? It's the same thing when you talk about Storm. It's like, well, I lost the Storm. Well, how many ghosts did you have? Well, I didn't have any. And it's like, well, like, what do you expect to happen, right? Same sort of thing when you're dealing with Colossus. Like, you know, I see people post on all things Terran all the time, and they're like, I keep losing to Protoss. I can't beat Protoss. And they post the replay, and they have like 7 Vikings and like 86 Marines, and it's like, well, you know, I can tell you why you probably lost that. I don't know if you want to hear it, but yeah. You know, if you use a website like SCT Replay Stats or GG Tracker, I can check in and see how many Marines I've made this season, how well they've done in each matchup, right? And against Zerg, they do really well. My Marines have like a 1.4, 1.5 KDA. Against Protoss, it's like 0.4. And there's a reason for that, because they just died of the splash damage. Yeah, it's nice to have them, and they can do some damage every now and then, but they're not the most effective unit you're going to have in your army composition, right? That goes to things like Ghosts, which, ironically enough, for me last about 50 seconds, apparently. It's not good, by the way. That goes to things like Ghosts and Marauders and stuff like that, right? Like, you really have to, or I guess Widow Mines. My Widow Mines is pretty good. But, you really have to, like, look at, you know, the big picture, right? Like, if you really find something frustrating to play against, like, you have to learn how to play against it, because guess what? It's not going away. You know, they're not going to nerf Widow Mines to the point where they're useless again, right? It's just not going to happen. So you need to get used to playing against that stuff if you want to get better, right? It's not like Zerg doesn't have great units too, but it's, you know, when I see people complain about something, and then I see the combination of people suggesting like cheesy all-ins to get around it and stuff like that, or to play an easier composition because your injects don't need to be as good as they do for Lingbane Muta, like, get out of here, man. Like, just get better. If you're going to complain and bitch about something, get better. It really is that simple. And it frustrates me to no end. So you have to challenge yourself to get better before you're actually going to start seeing those results, right? You know, get rid of all these dumbass adjustments and just learn to play like the pros do, man. Like, copy their builds. Like, you'll see them defend crazy all-ins all the time with just really good micro. Even a good example, I ended up losing the game, but what happened was I played against the Zerg, and he realized he wasn't going to be able to hold my pressure against his third, right? So I killed his third base, and at the same time, about half my units ended up dying when he was finally able to clean it up. But I did pick up and save some, and I went home. And then I didn't even have a bunker, and he's got like 50 lings. So he's like, well, I guess I'm going to Bane bust him. And he ended up making a lot of Banelings. Like, there's like 15 to 20 Banelings. Now, they were slow Banes, but it was like 15 to 20 Banelings, plus about 30 or 40 Lings coming into my base. And my defense consisted of about 5 to 6 Hellions and like 4 or 5 Marines, and 2 Widow Mines that came out at the last second, which means they weren't even burrowed when he initially busted. And I was able to hold, and I only lost 5 SCVs in the whole thing while preserving my units. And I had basically nothing to defend this attack with. And I was able to defend it with really good micro. I was actually pretty proud of myself for defending that attack, right? And at the end of the day, like, you gotta challenge yourself to get better, right? That's why I'm not afraid of those Baneling busts, because you can hold it with just, you know, strong micro, with playing well, with playing correct, that kind of stuff. And don't be afraid to challenge yourself. If I had to repeat that scenario, would I hold it as easily 2 times in a row? Probably not. But at the end of the day, I'm proud, and I'm celebrating that one time that I did it right. You know what I mean? Anyway, guys, this is Filter SC. This is a little bit more of a ranty episode because I'm sick and tired of people BMing and bitching on ladder about, you know, just all sorts of stuff. And you, at the end of the day, you gotta challenge yourself to get better. You know, the days of being like, oh, Protoss is easy are gone. You can't, you don't get to do that anymore, boys. Oh, oracles. Or you build a missile turret. Anyway, guys, this is Filter SC. I'll see you guys later. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm sorry it's a little bit ranty, but I'm just tired of people playing like this, complaining when they lose, and that's why there's a big-ass montage in the background of not necessarily BM, but of people losing like that. Anyway guys, like I said, I'll see you next time. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter and all that fun stuff. And I'll talk to you later.
Base is under attack.